Yeah, we're good to go.
Here we go.
Thank you. I see Mr. Coffey's online. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting to order. It's 9 a.m. Tuesday, November 25th. I'd like to acknowledge that our meeting takes place on the traditional territory of Chehalis. Are there any late items to introduce this morning? Seeing none, I'll go to moving of approval of agenda.
So move, your worship.
Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Swinemans. Discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and our agenda is approved. Item 5, items for discussion. Item A, and in our agenda looks a little bit familiar from our last council meeting. Is anyone on staff going to speak to this before we dive in? Who will?
Ken has a PowerPoint that he's going to share on the screen here.
All right, Mr. Cossey, over to you.
Super. Can everybody see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We can see you. Looking good, Ken.
How's that?
Well, good.
Oh, I think it's might be, yeah.
Here it is. We've got it now.
Super. Alrighty, so we're going to talk quickly about zoning amendment bylaw number 1230. That's the one that we talked about at the last council meeting. So basically, this bylaw 1230 is based upon the housing needs report that we had done earlier, and that was adopted
Can
by
I interrupt you?
Sorry?
Can you make the actual slides larger, either use the display mode or somehow increase the font? It's just a little bit small for us trying to read it here in the room.
Sure.
Go into like the little presentation mode perhaps, or because a good third of the screen is the software buttons on the top.
Ken, if you press the slideshow button at the top there.
Yeah, it's covered right now.
There's another one on the bottom beside
There we
the
go.
ball or size.
There we go.
There. Thank you very much again. Sorry to
How's that?
interrupt. Yes, good. Thank you.
Where to go? There, can you see it?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So what this is zoning amendment bylaw 2030, as I was saying earlier. And what this is based upon the housing needs report. This is the report that we did back in February, March of 2025 that was accepted by the council. This housing needs report is a requirement from the federal or the provincial government. And basically, it's a formal analysis required by BC law that aims to identify both current and future housing requirements. So we have to look at a whole bunch of things like demographic data, the market trend, and input from the residents and housing providers to pinpoint gaps in the supply and affordability of the homes. And to do this housing needs report, we use the HART method that was developed by UBC. That's the Housing Assessment Resource Tool that was created by the UBC Planning Department. And these findings from these reports directly inform local policy, planning, and funding priorities. So we started off with an earlier 2019-2021 report, and since then we are required to do one now every 5 years. And the first time that we were supposed to start was 2025. And this, as I mentioned earlier, provides an assessment of the village's current and projected housing needs. And as I said, they're also mandated by provincial legislation. So what is missing? Because in the Housing Needs Assessment Report 2019, we have projected 185 units have been required from 2021 to 2026. So what is missing we haven't covered in any of our bylaws yet? Because we've covered the single family dwellings and our traditional market quite well. So basically what we are missing is supportive housing, employee housing, and affordable housing. And this is identified in section 5.1 of the Housing Needs Report, and it was identified in a table. So looking at all of this, there's been a lot of confusion going around as to what are we actually doing. We had the province that was doing the SMOO requirements, which this has got nothing to do with, but this is the timeline that came out from the federal or the provincial government. January 1, 2025, local governments must have completed their interim housing needs report, and we had ours February, March. And March 2025, the province came out with their proactive planning guidance documents. That's SMOO, small scale multi-unit housing requirements. We are not a part of by any stretch of the imagination. This is the one where we asked for the exemption and we were exempted from that, because if we were not exempted, we would be at this particular point in time be required by legislation to allow, depending on the parcel size, 3 to 6 units per parcel of land, and we're not there at all. So if you can look forward to the because we're not doing that at all. So if you move forward to December 31, 2025, municipalities must have completed their first review and update of their OCP, which we have done. And now we're doing the zoning bylaw. And it's all based upon the interim housing needs report. And this is the point that we are at this particular point in time. The December 31, 2028 and 2030 are for uses or for work down the road as we go through this housing process. But you can see that this is information has been provided by the province of British Columbia through their legislation. So basically, what does Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2030 do? Well, it addresses the following housing issues. It looks at the supportive housing issues, it looks at employee housing, and it looks at affordable housing. So what we've done is, if you can quickly look at Bylaw 2030, which is a part of your agenda package, you can see the first thing that we've done is we've defined what we mean by employee housing. Then we follow that up with what we mean by housing cooperatives, and then non-market housing, and then supportive housing. And then what we've done is, as you can see in the bylaw, is we've amended the bylaw to allow it in all of the permitted uses, or is a permitted use in all the zones. And that's identified as point F in the bylaw that's in front of yourself. So it's a permitted use in all of the zones. So for the setback requirements, we're allowing these types of dwellings, these types of buildings to follow the R3 requirements for setbacks only. The lot width and the parcel size are not applicable, but they will have to follow the respective zoning requirements for subdivision of the land. So if somebody wants to do a subdivision in the R1 zone, they have to follow those requirements of the R1, which dictates the lot width and the parcel size. So this bylaw addresses the placement of a building on the land only, and it is not for the subdivision of the land by any stretch of the imagination. So what else we've done in here is we've reduced the on-site parking requirements. That's at the top of page 3 of your bylaw. And then for the maximum height is 13 meters for supportive housing project only. The employee housing and affordable housing dwelling units would follow the R3 height of 10.7 meters. And please note that only the R4 use is allowed to go up to 11 meters. All the other residential zones follow the 10.7 meter height requirement. So you can see that we're only dealing with the placement of the building on a parcel of land. We're not talking about subdividing the land. And then this is what we've done with the bylaw. And at this particular point in time, I'm just wondering if there's any questions or comments.
Any other questions? Councillor Pacho.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Cossey. Ken, I understand what you're saying. My only concern is in regards, are we able to like we have at the moment in our zoning to have specific areas of the village where these type of houses can go on? I mean, I'll bring an example on the weekend with the mayor of Burnaby when he was walking around his community, and he had a rancher with a sixplex next to it. I mean, that to me doesn't seem the way to go personally. So if we had a designated areas like we have, say, the Lillooet is Esplanade is commercial, Lillooet is commercial. If we got those there's parcels along there that could be used for either for the rental for the employee or the other two types that you mentioned, and also maybe the west side of Hot Springs Road as well, instead of diving into the residential areas as they are. Because if, for the sake of speaking, I'll take Echo Avenue, which is a lot old, and Naismith, which is the old 75 by 150 lots, quarter acre lots. I mean, if somebody moved out and the house was demolished, I wouldn't like to see a sixplex just dumped right, or two of them on that land next to a ranchers that have been there for years. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, yes, and this does not allow for sixplexes.
Okay, but what about for when you talk about the height?
The 13 meters, that's for a 4-story building. If you wanted to, you can take it all back down to 10.7 meters for all of the housing stock, period. So everybody would be at 10.7.
But can we still not change the zoning to designated areas? That's what I'm coming from.
Yes, you can. You can do that. You can put it all in the commercial area if you want, or you can put it all in the residential area. You can put it all in the village residential, or as I said, or any combination thereof. But if you wanted it just strictly in the commercial, yes, you can do that.
Okay, that's my question. That's what I'm coming
And I
from.
think this is an important point.
Yeah.
I think what this is doing is we're identifying where the 3 new categories of housing are going to potentially be zoned in the village: employee housing, cooperative housing, non-market housing, and supportive housing. And I share some concerns. I think particularly looking at an R1 area, I don't know if an employee housing unit necessarily fits in that area.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I appreciate the setbacks being reduced, and looking at our zoning bylaw, the setbacks are what they are, 7.5. There's a slight reduction in the setbacks. Obviously, there's a different building. That I think gives me a little pause as well. I am very uncomfortable with the height for what's called supportive housing going up to 13 meters. I think if we get any proposals for supportive housing or cooperative housing or non-market housing, and they want to exceed any of our residential zoning things, that has to be considered with that proposal if they're looking for a variance or an exemption to the existing setbacks or height. This seems like without knowing, it just doesn't. I don't know why a 13 meters would fit in R1 for supportive housing in a R1 zoned area. That seems like it would just be what? And it seems to be that it would just be somehow approving something without actually considering it's where it goes in the context in the neighborhood it would fit in. So I think some of these housing fit well in the C zones, the commercial zones, and potentially the R2 or R3s. But I have trouble with R1 being open to all these as laid out. And I know supportive housing can take a whole variety of forms. You can have supporting housing simply in a duplex for people that have special needs. It's tricky. Maybe I'll stop there if there's any more comments.
I think Ken had his hand up.
Oh, yeah, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Your Worship, that the 13 meters is only for supportive housing. All of the other housing types that have been mentioned have to go to 10.7.
Mayor Talon.
Councillor Swinbanks.
Yeah, Ken, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Talon, to Ken, can you comment on our current housing needs report? How we're doing in the long term? Are we meeting our objections? Do we have units coming on board that will put us in compliance with our needs?
Yes, Your Worship. The last time I was looking, we were on track for the target in 2021, 2026. I believe it was 185. I think the last time I did the count with all of the approved and the pending, we were 180-ish.
And that will put us in compliance for the next 5 years. Is that right?
We have to do another housing needs report?
Yeah, is it by 2028 that we need to do another HNR?
Yes.
Okay. And do we have enough units coming on board in the next 3 to 4 years?
Oh, yes.
To satisfy our housing needs?
From the single family dwellings and the traditional dwelling structures, yes, but we don't have anything for supportive housing, nothing for the employee housing at this time, although we've had some discussions. There's been nothing for the non-market housing and none for the cooperative housing. So these are the other types in the housing needs report that we're addressing, because you're doing quite well on the single family dwellings and the traditional build dwellings.
And what would it be okay if we just sort of left things as is? As I mentioned last week, you've done a good job of putting in these new classes of housing, supportive and employee and non-market. Why are we being so prescriptive with a kind of a blank check on the whole village to allow these things without much public or council oversight? It just worries me, to Councillor Fascio's point, that we have sort of opened up the whole village to these classes of dwellings. So why did we do that? I know that we need to placate the provincial government, and I'm just trying to make sure that we don't lose our sovereignty in our decision making. I don't want to handcuff a future council from being able to make decisions yes or no on certain developments. So I'm just wondering why we've done that. Do we need to do that?
Yes and no, because if you don't put something in, if you just leave it with the definitions at this point, then a developer can come in and say, well, I'm going to do this. And they may not be the requirements that you may want as a council, because we haven't given them anything other than a definition. So what are the setbacks going to be for that individual if they come in and say, we want it here or we don't want it there? So this is how you do this through your zoning bylaw. You implement the policies of the OCP. The OCP is very broad, but having said that, you can still narrow it down to just a specific zone. You can just say it'll only be in commercial zones and it'll be 10.7 meters and you're done.
Yeah. No, I like that idea. My concern is that seems like an OCP exercise. I know this is what we're doing, but it's sort of opening up the can of the OCP, and we don't even have a map in front of us, to really wrap our heads around this. If you were to tell me where the R3s, I frankly, without a map, I wouldn't really know. And Councillor Fascio had the example of Echo. I think that's kind of where we should direct some of this kinds of development. Those are all large lots where this kind of development lends itself. That's where you might want some big bungalows and that sort of thing. So I just feel like we're opening up a can. I'm hoping that we can just solve today by doing the minimum and then really having a good OCP exercise in the future.
Thank you. My issue is changing the setbacks in these. And I don't think they're all the same. I think employee housing is a different character. then housing cooperatives, non-market housing, or supportive housing. And supportive housing, for example, could be a group home for disabled adults. And I have personal experience with how that operates in other places. But those houses fit in to the neighborhood. There's no different setbacks, there's no different zoning. They are just another house in the neighborhood that's been renovated to accommodate individuals with special needs. That should be possible, but you don't need to change all the height and the setbacks and all the other things. It fits into the neighborhood as a neighborhood. And there's probably good social reasons for having supportive housing in a residential neighborhood. Employee housing is a little different in my mind, and cooperative housing and non-market housing. I'm just really uncomfortable changing the setbacks in an R1 zone if someone calls it a non-market housing or cooperative housing, and you get a different setbacks and different heights. That makes me really uncomfortable. I see lots of hands. I'll let Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon, through you to Ken. Would permitted in all zones, does that have the potential to override development permit area requirements or any design guidelines that we have?
No, only, no, your worship, that doesn't override it. You still have to require the developer to do all the development permit requirements, whatever development permit they're in, area that they're within. You can, though, in your OCP, yeah, we can start stipulating that they're exempt from the development permits. It's a consideration that you've got as a flexible tool right now, but we don't have any direction specifically saying to override all of the development permit requirements.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, Mayor Talon. I know that the East Sector special area is exempt, and I'm just wondering why. I mean, nobody wants to see development in the East Sector, but just what the justification was for not including it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of Crown land in that area, so.
Okay, and would it also then affect any other park area within the village?
I'm sorry, I don't under. Do
Like
you think
that
this?
permitting in all zones, would that affect any of the established park areas that we have within the village? Such as Spring Park or?
No, it will not affect. It's basically what is being used right now on the ground at this particular point in time won't get affected.
Okay,
The parks
thank you.
are fine, and it's only one building per lot still that you're having. It's not like somebody's going to have a single family dwelling and then in their backyard have the supportive housing dwelling. It'll be one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councillor Patrick.
Just want
Yeah.
to correct one comment first to Councillor Schweinbenz. I didn't mean that these type of homes should go on Echo Avenue. If they did, it wouldn't be. It would look stupid with a rancher and a tall building. Now, when we did the previous OCP, there was planning area 1 and 2. One was Pine, one was Echo, where they could have coach houses. That went to R2. That's right. But north of that, going towards Lillooet, for me personally, like the mayor said, I don't want any of this to get into the R1 zone. Like I said, leave the setbacks as they are, but just if we're going to have these type of buildings, let's put them in the commercial sectors. Let's put them there. If we can change the zoning to say that, then that word, the whole village, is taken out for buildings, tall buildings.
Right.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
That word of the whole
So-
village, is that if you open that up, say the whole village, you can have tall buildings all over the place going up. If we restrict it like we have now to certain zones in the community, then that's where they could go if a developer was to come forward with a proposal, or and if it satisfies the province, which I think it would. Now, we've identified these areas as for employee rental and the other non-market rental. And as the mayor said, maybe if there's no change to the R1 zone with setbacks, then a normal house could be built for other types of people to live there. So that's where I'm coming from. Let's get a zone done. Let's put a zone in there. Ken says we can do that. And I think that will take away this word of the whole village, which is a real concern, I think, to all of us.
Can I make a suggestion? I think there's two classes here of housing, at least in my mind. And my suggestion is employee housing is a different character than the other types of cooperative, non-market, or supportive housing. My suggestion is, and just for discussion to see if we can advance this, getting to a resolution on how to move forward, employee housing in the commercial areas, and the other types of housing it can be in residential, but I don't want to see any changes to the setbacks or heights. If you want to put in supportive housing in an R1, then the R1 zoning for setbacks, heights, and all the building footprint, all that continues. So you have a house that fits into the neighborhood. It happens to have people with special needs and have some assistance. That house has been modified, but the exterior of it fits the neighborhood. Same with non-market housing or cooperative housing, that they fit the character of the neighborhood. So my suggestion is employee housing be restricted to the commercial area. The other three housing can go in the residential areas because they seem like they're part of neighborhoods and residences, but without any modifications to the setbacks or any of the other features that we have in our R1 to R5 zones.
Sounds good to me.
Councillor
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Talon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like your idea in concept. It just more to my point. This is an OCP exercise, and I think we're going to be doing it in 3 years. Maybe some of us will be involved, maybe not. I don't want to handcuff future council in the next 3 years by decisions that we're making today, which I feel are kind of uninformed. Because, like I said, we don't even have a map in front of us. We're not even considering how putting residential components into the commercial area might look and might affect the character of the area and the function of the area. We might be taking up commercial spots for that could be businesses in the future for residential. And your idea about the employee housing one, maybe it's okay if it looks like a house and it contains 6 employees, why not in R1? To your point, as long as it looks like a house and looks like the form and character of its surrounding area, I think it's okay. So I just feel like this is an OCP exercise that we're kind of rushing into. And I know that we need to placate the provincial government. We need to do that today, but I think we should do that at the bare minimum standards. I don't want to change setbacks or heights just to placate them today. So bigger exercise than I think we're prepared to this morning. That's my point.
Well, we need to move this forward in some
Yeah.
way. I take the point. We're now characterizing several types of housing that weren't characterized before, defined before, and so if they're defined, it's incumbent on us to think about where those might go. I look at the non-market, cooperative, and supportive housing as we could have an agency simply purchase a duplex in an R2 zone and rent it out below market. And there's no issue with that. The duplex meets all the zoning. So its use is, I don't have a conceptual issue. I don't see the problem with that occurring in a residential area within the existing zoning, the setbacks, the footprints, and all that, or the other types of cooperative or supportive housing. I give pause on employee housing, and I know a business can rent a house and just let their employees live in it. In the commercial area, we already have housing, like there's all the condos on Esplanade and those type of things. So it has a mix of uses. Employee housing might have a different character to me, but the real thing for me is not modifying the heights, the setbacks, and all those other features of the existing zones through this process that changes how a neighborhood looks. Those exist, and people are fairly comfortable with them. And I agree, if we want to change the setbacks or the heights, that's a bigger question. And then we should have more informed with public input on those things.
And Mayor Town, to your point, I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's just keep things the same, put these classes in there, take a look at the definitions. But I just, with your idea, future council would be able to vote on a variance. If another society comes in and wants to do something in an R2 lot or R3 lot, we have control. Public has some comment to it, and that's what I want to retain.
So let's start with the simple stuff. I'm sensing a bit of a consensus that we don't want to tinker with the setbacks and all the other features of the existing zones that we have, both residential and commercial. So if there is housing, these newly defined housing categories, is there a consensus that we use the existing zoning setbacks and those are the ones that govern these housing? And if there are variances, exemptions, we'll get those at the time if someone is seeking that. But otherwise, we're not changing the setbacks and the heights and the building footprints of the existing zones. We're just permitting certain types of housing that we've now defined to occur in the village as long as the building meets the existing zoning bylaws. Councilor Jackson?
I find it kind of strange because we're dealing with the subject. Please tell me, what is affordable housing? We have a new house being built, 1.2 million. It's going to be beautiful. Is that affordable? So when you're dealing with this abstract sort of thing that we don't know what we're really talking about. Because what is affordability? I don't know. Is it 500,000?
Yeah.
So I agree with R1 should stay the way R1 is, and supportive housing should be the housing that normally is done through provincial government, where they subsidize the housing and people can live there and have a good life. I agree with all that.
Yeah.
We don't know what the definition means. And this is where I'm having a very difficult time with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how can you really come to a definitive conclusion when you don't know what you're really talking about?
Yeah.
And because when the price of housing comes down, all the people that own a house, the value of theirs is coming down.
It does as well.
So,
I want to advance this, and I sense great reluctance, and I think the reluctance comes from changing our zoning regulations, if I'm correct. Can we start with that? Can I put a motion forward to say this bylaw will not amend any of the residential or commercial zoning features concerning setbacks, heights, and building footprint, those type of things, that those, we're not changing any of those at this time.
that's good.
Can I put a motion forward to that? I'm just trying to advance this conversation so it'll help some staff. Seconded by Councilor Fascio. Any discussion on not tinkering with the setbacks, the heights, the building footprints, everything we see on our zoning bylaw? Councilor Schweinman.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor Town. Question though, maybe through you to Mr. Cossey. If we adopt this policy, can a developer or builder or homeowner still come to us and ask for a variance if required? A meter here, a meter there. They can still do that. Good. So we retain control.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. Any further discussion? I'll call a vote on that. All in favor? Okay, so we're not tinkering with any of the setbacks, the heights. Great. Now the question I think that's in front of us to help staff bring this forward to our next council meeting is, do we want to limit or restrict where these types of housing occur in the village, or the building and how it's used? Do they all fit in everywhere? And I think that's the next question. And Councillor Fatch.
I'm still of the opinion, Your Worship, that we should designate an area for the rental I mean, we already have, I'm not sure it's come through yet. I know there was discussion earlier this year, one going up on the west side of Hot Springs Road between the new campground. So that's a proposal, and has it come full council? Maybe that, I don't think it has anyway. But there's going to be a rental 4-story building going there, I believe, at some point. They've got the land for it. So that's why I say it could be a designated area on the west side.
Yeah.
That is designated as special, what is it, Ken?
C3 right now.
C something?
Yeah, I think it's C3.
C3, correct, yeah, tourist commercial, okay, that's tourist commercial. So,
Yeah, tourist
I'm
accommodation.
sorry, are we talking about 728?
yeah,
Yeah, that we got it in as yeah, C3.
yeah,
C3, the uses include apartments, tourist accommodation, campground, holiday parks, and detached dwelling.
right. So my question,
Yeah.
Your Worship, is
Yeah.
I would still like to see a designated area for the, which is much needed, as we know, for rental
Okay.
in the community. So it doesn't go up in, if those two houses were knocked down, they wouldn't go in between those two
Right.
residential homes.
Right.
Let's designate an area like we've got in the OCP in the zoning now. Where R2s are Pine and Echo for coach houses or duplexes. The front streets are commercial, and Lillooet is commercial. I mean, even East Lillooet, that corner house with a picket fence, that's all commercial. That's all commercial. That could be that could be for a perfect location for rental. So I keep coming, sorry, maybe I'm confusing people. All I want to see is I would like to see, my apologies,
Mhm.
is an area designated for where they can put a 4-story building for rental. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure we understand what you're asking here
Yeah.
and see what's actually on the ground today with the existing bylaws. Mr. Cossey, are there any restrictions in our bylaws on limiting if there is a house or apartment or duplex, for whatever you call, from it being owned as a strata corp or rented? Are there any restrictions today on where someone can have rental residences?
No, Your Worship, there's no restriction from that way. Tenure is tenure, whether it's rented or owned.
So right now, a house owned in an R1 or a duplex in an R2 or something in the R, that can be owned or rented. The owner can rent it out. There's no restrictions right now on where an owner can rent out a residence.
Having said that,
Is that your point?
No.
So
No,
I thought you were saying,
Provincial government is allocating that we should have rental. And when we talk about rental, the last few months or the last year, it's been the shortage of rental for people working in the community who cannot find a place to live, or a family who can't afford a home, they would like to rent, they can't afford to buy a home. So that's where I'm coming from, Your Worship. It's that type of thing.
but this is permitted everywhere in the village. There's no restrictions today on an owner of a house, a property, a fourplex or whatever, renting that building out, renting it out to another individual. That's what I understand. Mr. Cossey, you have your hand up.
yes, Your Worship, there is a provision in the Local Government Act that allows the municipality just to designate an area for rental tenure only.
Okay,
There
but
are
do we have
examples
that
of that,
today?
but we don't have that in our zoning bylaw.
Okay, so we have that ability, we haven't exercised it as a local government. So right now, any property can be rented to another individual. That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Just to clarify that point, through you to Mr. Cossey. So if I'm wherever I am, if I have a home and I've got lots of room, maybe I'm elderly and I want someone to live with me, relative or not a relative, can I subdivide my home, make it a suite in the basement or upstairs
So-
for an employee
so-
or someone who needs to live
So
there.
now that's a different thing.
Yeah.
That's
Is it?
completely,
Yeah.
well, that to me is, you're either renting your dwelling that you own, or now you've done something different. You've now created a secondary unit in it. So Mr. Cossey, do we have bylaws about secondary units and on properties? And I'm sure we do.
Yes, we do, your worship. If you, in the zoning regulations, you can either have an accessory residential suite or a
Yeah.
coach house, but not both. And they're limited to the R2 zones only.
And
So that's in the zoning bylaw on page 48, has all those.
right, and that's the part, Mayor Town, if I could respectfully.
Yeah.
You know, I really believe that we need to increase supply and diversity of housing, and there's lots of young people that want to work here seasonally or full-time. We ought to be able to open up basements wherever we live. And that'll help open up 100 units here and there. I don't think it's a problem to open up the whole village for that sort of thing, to be able to subdivide your home. It's your personal home, you can do with it what you want, and if you want someone living downstairs or upstairs, renting a room, I don't see the problem with that. So that's the kind of thing that I'd like to change in the OCP. I think sometimes
That's
we go
a
for
different,
home.
I think that's a different conversation that's
Yeah.
beyond this, and that's accessory buildings and suites within. And right now that would be a conversation about changing how R1 is zoned or how R2 is zoned for these uses. And right now, there are clear rules in our zoning bylaw on where that's permitted and where it's restricted.
Well, respectfully, this morning we were presented with a proposal that would change the OCP in its entirety also, or affect it greatly. So if we're gonna open up the can, let's look at everything.
But I think
So that's just not.
the last motion we passed closed
Good.
can. I think we put the can opener away, so to speak, by saying we're not changing any of the zoning restrictions, limits that we find in the R and the C zones.
I hope that a future council will look upon that,
Yeah.
what I was describing,
Yeah.
because, you know, a lot of people go for these home runs and duplexes and rental, when the answer lies in the current stock of housing. If we could just increase the number of dwellings in each house, so lots of 350 square foot, 3,000 square foot homes out there that have one person in them, that might like someone to rent their basement suite or a room upstairs. So hopefully future councils can look at that.
Yeah, Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I know Councillor Schweinbent spoke about future councils. I don't think that we can predict what the provincial government is going to come up with, you know, in the years to come. So, Ken, am I right in saying that the provincial government could come up with totally new regulations that would require amendments to OCP and to zoning bylaws again? And the reason I ask is I don't think we should get caught up on what future councils may or may not do. I think that it's important we concentrate on where we are right now and what the BC government has mandated right now. Your comments, Ken?
Yeah, yes, your worship, it's a dangerous game right now to try to predict what the future provincial government is going to do or how they're going to do things. But it's always up to the council. If they don't like whatever they've got, they can change the bylaw as they see fit at any time. But it's a council decision.
Mayor Town, if I could.
Oh, sorry. Ken, is there a finishing thought to your comment?
Yeah, and we do have the zoning bylaw on our land development project for update, and that's going to start next year. We've just put that aside till we get the OCP and zoning bylaw out of the way because of the deadlines, and then we're going to get back to updating the various land development bylaws, which includes the zoning bylaw for next term.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Town. If I may, Councillor Vidal makes a good point. I just want to extend it though and say that, there are, I think it was section 583 or point 583 in the Government Act where, if something is in the OCP, we may waive some of the development cost charges and that sort of thing for supportive housing, non-market housing, that sort of thing. In 2 years, the province might say you must. So that's why I don't want to give a blank sheet today to all of these things in all of these areas. We need to restrict it and prescribe it. Secondly, not only might they force us to waive charges, but they've also may force us to waive public hearings. And if one of these big supportive housing developments is going on in a certain area, I think the public ought to have a say in it. So that's my concern, just to extend what Councillor's concern is. I just wanted to extend that and make sure that we really realize the implications of what we're doing.
Councillor Fatch.
I'm happy to vote on this. We will respect the Local Government Act. It's been there for donkey's years. It's never been challenged. And if everything falls in line with the OCP and the zoning, you do not require a public hearing. It's there in black and white. It's never been changed.
Correct. So if we put it
So
in
like
today,
Mayor Talon says, if the house is built exactly with the right setbacks and the right height, and then it just comes forward like a normal building permit, you don't need a public hearing or a subdivision. It all falls in line with the OCP or the zone. Which obviously, if it all falls in line, why would you need a public hearing? Nobody's doing anything illegal.
Okay.
That's where I'm coming from, council, from that perspective. But so we've got a motion on the floor, is that correct?
No, we don't.
Oh.
Not right now, to
Oh.
my knowledge.
Oh.
And our corporate officer is saying there is no motion on the floor. We got through part of it. And I think the second one, I think, to give our staff sufficient guidance so we get something that's going to be closer to something we could approve, is, are there any restrictions in the where these types of housing, employee housing, housing cooperatives, non-market housing, supportive housing, where they can go in the village? Or is it just anywhere provided the building fits the zoning bylaws and the OCP? And I think that's the last bit. Is there any limits where they can appear in the village? And I know everyone wants to comment on that. So that's the question. And I'll open it up to comment.
if I may, I didn't really understand why the whole village was included, including P1s. These are parks. We don't want one of these things to show up or to be approved in Woods Park as an example, or in any of these P1s or VRs, W1s. I wasn't sure why they're there.
Can I stop you right there?
Point, they own certain C3s. And
Can I stop you right there, and I'll get some clarification from
Sure.
Mr. Cossey, I think. Can you answer, Mr. Cossey, why these 4 new categories of housing would be permitted in the P1, the park area, but not including the east sector as we see on page 4?
Yes, Your Worship. If you go to the, I'm just flipping quickly through the section 3.4 of the zoning bylaw. We got permitted uses in all the zones. And this is where it was going to go into, because you can see there's quite an extension of uses already in that category. Public washrooms, picnic sites, watershed protection projects, fish and wildlife, ecological reserves, trails, temporary buildings, utility services, community gardens and community horticulture projects, any improved environmental protection, restoration and enhancement, and government uses.
So I'm looking at the bylaw, zoning bylaw on page 51, and I'm looking at the P1 zone and permitted uses. There's 2 cited that I read, which are community uses and farmers markets. But I don't see housing in 713 of our bylaw.
No, that's what this bylaw would do. It would allow, if this amendment
Would allow
bylaw went
that.
through as it is, it would add to that.
Okay, so let's talk about this right now. Let's just chip away at this until we get an answer. I guess the question is, Councillor Swinman's question, and I'm sure his motion is whether or not these four new types of housing should be allowed in a P1 area. Have it zoned and have our bylaw amended so that on its face of it, it can be allowed. Is that the question?
Thank you, Mayor
I'm
Tom.
gonna just
Yeah,
try and chip away at it.
That summarizes my concern. And I think I know why some of this might be on here. We currently have a proposal to do something for supportive housing on this land here where we are, and it is in fact P1. So by putting it in P1, we wouldn't have much of a say on it. I just want to make sure that we have to go through the proper variance and public hearings if it's going to go here, if it's ever approved.
So this would be a change in how P1 would be used. And right now the uses are community uses and farmers markets. So I'm going to put a motion forward. Should these four types of housing, I'll put them all, I'll make it a yes or a no. Motion is that for me is employee housing, housing cooperatives, non-market housing and supportive housing do not fit in the P1 area of the park.
You need a seconder?
And a seconder to that motion. So we're saying no P1 can't go into P1. So when we're looking at page 4, all that would be struck out. Seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Your worship, our plan that's been made for the village to deal with this site, this is P1, and we're allowing, at the moment, we have an understanding with the community services about a seniors complex, plus at the time of the plan was made was going to be a rental plus parking area and moving the workshop. So this is to be used.
So that was a proposal, I accept that, but I think if it's going to be used for that, that obviously doesn't fit into the existing zoning bylaws, so it'd be up to council if there's a proposal to permit a variance or exemption, like Councillor Swinban said. We're not permitting something through the back door. If something comes up that doesn't fit into the existing zoning bylaw, we need a variance, exemption, something new, council will have to wrestle with that proposal in its entirety at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Including public hearing or public input.
Yeah, I think when we get to variances and exemptions to the zoning bylaw, it usually can trigger a public hearing. Mr. Cossey, you have your hand up.
Yes, Your Worship. It's I think it would be best at this point in time, instead of trying to go through each individual zone, it's just more of, do you want it in residential areas? Yes or no? Do you want it in commercial areas? Yes or no? And leave it at that. I don't think it's wise to go through and look at each of the individual zones. And also, I'd like to point out that this non-public hearing issue has been in the Local Government Act for years, and that tool has been added to recently by the provincial government by stating that it must not, if it meets with the OCP and it meets with the zone, or meets with the OCP that we currently have in place, that we must not have a public hearing when you're dealing with certain types of housing. That's the changes. They've already put the must in there. So this is a provincial directive, but that other thing has been in the Local Government Act for years, and in response to it, local governments have used what is called notice of intent. But overall, I would suggest that you just council look at saying, do we want it in the commercial area? Yes or no, or do we want it in?
We're gonna hold that thought. We're gonna get to that. We're chipping away at this one bite at a time. So the motion on the floor is not to include the housing in the P1 area. The seconded. Any further discussion on that? All in favor of not having the P1 part as the zoning, and that passes. Okay. On page 5, we got the W1 and the VR zones, and it also proposes here that these 4 types of housing be included in those areas. And I'll put the same motion forward that this type of housing doesn't fit into W1 and P1 because I don't believe those are existing uses.
W1, sorry, in
I-
VR?
Waterfront, does, doesn't it?
Just trying to get to it in our zoning bylaw right now and what the proposal. So W1, according to our zoning bylaw in 714, allows a marina and a float plane dock. Period. That's a use, and VR, so I don't think this is a good place for float plane dock. It doesn't fit. And the VR zone allows agriculture. Agriculture is the only permitted. So I don't see this fitting here as well. So I'd like to just have this motion that these 4 types of housing don't fit into the W1 or the VR zones. They won't fit there.
Okay.
We're seconder to that motion, then we can discuss it. Seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion, Councillor
Mayor
Vital.
Talon, just to confirm, it, in 20 years, we might want to put one somewhere, but the council of the day will have that option.
Yes.
Along with the-
We're not changing our zoning bylaws writ large through this process to permit non-market housing on a float plane dock. Okay. Any further discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor? Okay, so we're chipping away. Now we're left with the commercial zones, the C1, 2, 3, 4, and the R1 to R1 to R5. Should these housing, because now they're going to have to fit the form and the size and all that, should there be any restrictions on that? Now maybe just a general discussion, and then we'll sort out a motion to give staff sufficient direction. Any restrictions on any types of these housing occurring either in the commercial or the residential areas already, which are permitted uses in all these areas to have housing, dwellings, residences. So do we see any need to restrict this today? And I'll open the floor. Councillor Schweinfeld.
I'm fine with it all. I do have some concerns about the definition of one of them that is non-market housing, but maybe that's we do it at a later time. At a later vote.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to carry on with my thought about non-market housing, or should we just?
Sure. What's
Well, I'm just concerned about like non-market housing. I was looking into the website for BC Housing yesterday, and there's, non-market housing. Like I said, in future councils might be handcuffed by the province in saying that we need to waive development cost charges and connection charges and all that sort of thing, which would put a burden on the taxpayers. Some of this non-market housing includes for-profit developers, and these. Again, as a dad of young people, I want to increase the diversity and supply of housing, but I don't think we need to do it at the expense of our taxpayers here. For-profit developers maybe should be excluded from non-market housing because they can go to BC Housing for funding themselves through the BC Builds program, I believe it is. So anyways, maybe I'm raising this at an incorrect time, but non-market housing definition I'd like to take a look at as well before we vote.
okay?
R3s and that sort of thing.
I read the definition, and I think there's a potential scenario where a profit-driven organization has an apartment building or a sixplex or something and rents 5 of the units, say, out at market rates and rents 1 at below market.
Right. My concern, Mayor Town, is that in the future, the province may say that we must waive cost development charges for that developer.
But that's a different question than the definition. So I think the definition for what non-market housing is, I think it includes it. And I wouldn't want to exclude a developer who is a profit-based developer leasing 1 or a small number of units to below market because that's just what they want to do.
Right. We agree. I'm just concerned about what council of the day may be forced to do in terms of waiving costs.
But what does that have to do with, I'm missing, sorry, I don't understand the
Right.
connection. I don't understand the
I
connection
want
between,
to make sure I'm not
Yeah.
gonna not have the ability to discuss this topic before we vote
Yeah.
on it.
okay, so So I'm not understanding how a future provincial direction to waive certain fees or charges might apply to for-profit, non-market housing.
Well, I think
Tell me.
I think they could be a gift to developers to see an opportunity to waive these fees, connection fees, and
Okay.
to sort of offload some of their costs to village taxpayers.
Okay.
So that they can do these non-market housing, even though they're for profit. And I'm probably raising this issue at the wrong time because there's a motion on the table to vote about the Rs and all that sort of thing. But that's the concern. I just want to make sure that
So
it may be appropriate. I guess.
So it's a hypothetical scenario, one that doesn't exist today. I think if that situation arises, this council and probably every local government council will have to review all their fees and bylaws if all of a sudden certain developers have an ability to avoid certain charges. I think that will trick a much broader conversation at that time. And I don't think.
As long as what we do today isn't going to handcuff future councils.
We can't guarantee that, councillor.
Well, but if we include it in our OCP,
That can
then
change.
we are liable
Future
to the
councils,
changes that they
future
make.
councils can change the bylaws and the rules
Yeah.
if they decide to change it. There's nothing we can do today that binds a future council to a certain decision, corporate officer.
Thank you. Just to, as a point of clarification, the local governments throughout Canada only get their authority delegated to them from the province. So we really are beholden to the Local Government Act, the Community Charter. There's not a lot of flexibility. Of course, there's opportunity for advocacy when there are, for example, private members' bills that would force you to rely on certain reports or things of that nature for local governments to provide some pushback or demand consultation and that type of thing through their local government associations or UBCM. But we are really beholden to the provincial government of the day. And as Ken kind of mentioned earlier, it's extremely difficult to predict what that's going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years, what their priorities are going to be and what social challenges they're going to face. And yeah, DCC's, that's provincially legislated, right? So having to follow that, but we really are beholden to what the local government requires of us.
I think, once again,
Yeah.
Mayor Talon,
Yeah.
we should deal with what is put in front of us
Yeah.
right now
Yeah.
and not worry about what may or may not happen with future councils or future BC governments. Thank you, corporate officer, for that clarity.
Yeah, I think, I understand Councillor Swinban's your point, but I don't think there's anything we can do in a definition in this zoning bylaw to future-proof and protect ourselves down the road.
We can't resolve those issues.
Can't, so I agree, we need to deal with this today. So again, is anyone willing to put a motion forward to restrict these 4 new types of housing to occur in only certain, either residential or commercial or certain versions of it? Or do we just permit them generally in the commercial and the residential areas because housing is already permitted there? We know the building there's no changes to the building size. And does anyone willing to put a motion forward to restrict this? Or do we just, this is the way it will be and it fits the character?
We have to say,
I'm not seeing anything, so I don't think we need a motion not to do anything. But my question will be to staff, with this conversation and the motions we pass, is that sufficient information to come back at our next council meeting with a revised zoning amendment bylaw 1115 that aligns with this discussion?
So I'll take that, and then maybe Ken, I'll lean on you for some information. So just to be clear, based off of the motions passed today, there will not be any of those 4 types of housing: the employee housing, housing cooperatives, non-market housing, or supportive housing in P1, W1, and VR zones.
Correct.
And in addition to that, where they are permitted in the residential and commercial zones, they are to follow the existing setback height and building footprint requirements
good.
for that zone. Okay,
That's
that's
good.
what I understand. Ken, did you want further clarification on any of that, or does that make sense?
No, that's fine. The, in some of the commercial zones, you get 0 lot lines.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is the way commercial zones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the.
Yep, that's fine. Just as long, I'm just letting everybody know that that happens. It'll be a 0
Yes.
lot line.
So
I don't think we need a further motion.
No.
That's based off of the three
Okay.
motions that were already.
we don't need a
passed.
motion to say,
No.
there's nothing else that we're giving direction to
I
staff
think
to
it's
modify.
sufficiently
Okay.
covered off of those three motions.
Thank you. So I think we've concluded our A item on the agenda, and I thank everyone.
Thank you, Ken.
Excuse me, just what, your
Your
worship?
talent? Oh, Ken has his hand up.
Oh, Mr. Cossey,
So I'm assuming then everybody's all right with the parking requirements?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
thank
And
you.
it makes sense to me because
Yeah.
Were there big changes to parking?
less
Less
parking. It
Less
modifies the parking by either 3/4 of the requirement found in the zoning or half.
That's fine.
And
I've got room for an extra couple of cars on
Yeah.
my drive.
if it's supportive housing, I can assure you, my brother never drove a car and he shouldn't have, so he wouldn't need the parking spot. When he was living in a group home in a residential neighborhood.
Mayor Town,
Yeah.
I do have a question maybe.
Yeah,
While
go
Ken's
ahead.
still here is, I really do have an interest in what I was referring to before, is increasing the housing supply and diversity. How do we as a council do that? That's a question for Mr. Cossey or any other experienced councilor here. I really feel that, maybe we can kill two birds with one stone. There's lots of young people who want to live in a dwelling away from their parents' basement. And at the same time, there's lots of people on the other spectrum of life who might want someone to live with them, to share the cost, to share the errands and the burden of carrying a house. We can put these two people together and maybe open up the village a little bit more for more affordable rental housing in all housing types.
I take your point. I think right now our zoning bylaw permits that, depending on if it's R1, R2, all the Rs and the C. There's just certain restrictions, and if you want to put a notice of motion to change the R1 to include suites, then that is a legitimate motion and can be made at that time. But right now, the existing zoning bylaw permits suites and that kind of stuff for certain of the Rs. R2, you'd have to read it. But if you want it wide open to any, then that would be a motion you would need to put forward to amend that. And that would be a council discussion, debate, and a council decision whether to do that.
Good. I'll do some research with you, Ken. Thank you.
All right. That moves us on to the B item, which is business license and regulation amendment bylaw number 1231. Whoa, corporate officer has a PowerPoint.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a short one.
Thank you, Ken, for your
Thank you,
assistance.
Ken.
There, Ken. Go
Take
Chelsea.
care. Have a good day.
I'm glad the hammering has stopped. It's up outside.
Yeah.
It's gonna look good.
I think the point is it doesn't burn to the ground if a spark comes
As
through
well.
the building. I think that's the real purpose of these renovations.
All right, my computer's not working, so I'm gonna sit over here
All right.
and click through the slides for you, but. Okay, just a short PowerPoint today to kind of discuss where we are with these two bylaws and get some direction, so. So at the November 3rd regular council meeting, I put forward a report with 2 amendment bylaws proposing to clarify short-term rental regulations, provide a discount for mid-year applications by 50% for the business license fee, allowing for food trucks on private property or as part of special events, and also providing the village with the ability to charge for false alarms for fire department attendants. At that time, council discussed the impact of allowing food trucks, engaging the business community, and allowing door-to-door sales and buskers. And both those bylaws were given first 2 readings and referred back to staff. Between November 3rd and November 17th, several businesses and the Chamber of Commerce wrote to council expressing both concerns and tentative support for certain aspects of the amendments. It varied across the businesses. Some businesses were not supportive of the increase in fees, while others felt the fees were reasonable but had some concerns with the food trucks. Others felt that the food trucks were acceptable in certain on private properties and things like that. And so there was a staff report proposing to move forward with the fee structure changes, but keep the prohibition of food trucks as it currently is in the bylaw to allow more time for engagement and research. At that time, the business license amendment had second reading rescinded, so it's currently just sitting at first reading. However, the fee amendment bylaw was given third reading. So some current challenges that we're experiencing with the business license bylaw. I touched on it a little earlier. There's a lack of clarity surrounding when we need one for a short-term rental. There's business owner frustration for having to pay a full business license fee for a mid-year application. Currently, we don't have the ability to charge for false alarm fire department attendance. And we've received several inquiries for food trucks at private and special events, and then also wanting to bring those business license fees into alignment with other local governments. This slide just summarizes some of the discussion that we've heard at the council table. So wanting to ensure fairness to the tax-paying year-round business owners in town. The pros and cons of permitting food trucks in limited circumstances, such as at campgrounds, during private memorial hall rentals, or to enhance special events. And then relaxing provisions for buskers and door-to-door sales. Just wanted to touch on the timeline for business licensing. So currently we have a loss of revenue coming from and a lack of clarity coming from the short-term rentals that ideally would be clarified prior to the billing cycle, which is set to take place the first week of December, could be pushed slightly, and fees are due in mid-January for business licensing. So I've provided 2 kind of high-level options. Of course, there's more, but these are kind of the main ones that I think council should consider today. We could keep everything as is and not adopt any amendment bylaws. The pro to this would be there's no changes to the food truck prohibition, but as you can see, there's many disadvantages and touching on kind of the challenges that wouldn't address any of the challenges that we're experiencing right now with the existing bylaws. So the second option is to give second and third reading to the most recent draft of the Business License and Regulation Amendment Bylaw, which is included in your agenda package. Now, this would keep the prohibition of food trucks the exact same as it is right now. And then ideally, we would get some direction from council to either, completely stop with relaxing that provision or direct us to come back with some more research on food trucks, buskers, and door-to-door sales. And then also adopt the miscellaneous fee bylaw, amendment bylaw. So as you can see, there's some pros there. It addresses all those challenges, but also allows for more time for consultation and research on food trucks, buskers, and door-to-door sales. It also would allow us to implement those fees as of January. However, it does not immediately address the food trucks, buskers, or door-to-door sales. So these are a couple questions that I wanted to get some answers from council so that we have some good direction for the next council meeting. So whether council wants to implement the new fee structure as of January 2026 will kind of define our timeline on our end and what the priority is for these 2 bylaws. Does council want to continue the prohibition on food trucks or direct staff to conduct some more engagement and research and report back? As you can see, we got quite a bit of feedback from the business community, and that was prior to even reaching out to them. So they're very engaged and want to have that level of input. And then the last question there is, does council want to continue the prohibition of buskers at unsanctioned events? So just to be clear, they are permitted as part of a special event, but it would be limited to certain times and areas. Door-to-door sales are prohibited, or direct staff to conduct more engagement and research and report back. And I'll pop back to this slide maybe to kind of guide the discussion, but the last slide here is just the next steps. So the committee of the whole can recommend readings to council, but they're not given unless council adopts the report at the next meeting. And the business license bylaw amendments still require us to publish notice. So that's another timeline factor to take into account. And then lastly, the amendments to the miscellaneous fee bylaw are intended to be jointly adopted with the business license amendment. Otherwise, the two bylaws would be in conflict. So we can't adopt the fee structure until we address the content of the business license amendment. And that's it for my presentation. I can go back to that screen if we want to get some direction.
Are these the 3 doors? Looking for us to pick one of these doors?
No,
Or is it consolidated?
I'm hoping to get answers ideally to all 3 of those questions
Okay.
to kind of inform what our priority is in terms of timing, and then also inform next steps for us. Are we prohibiting food trucks and leaving it at that, or do you want us to kind of conduct some more research and go from there?
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to move that we go forward with the new fee structures of January 2026,
Right.
and that,
Let's go one at a time. Let's keep it simple.
Oh, one of the.
So let's do box number 1, motion, I guess, to implement the new fee structure. And that's what we see in front of us here, which is, I guess, that would be Schedule E, to be clear, in our package.
So that, the answer to that question, if the answer is yes,
Yeah.
then what we'll be doing is bringing back a bylaw with that timeline in mind,
Okay.
and knowing that we need to have it ready to go for the next regular council meeting.
But the fee structure is what's listed in Schedule E?
Yes, so the fee structure is what's listed in Schedule E, and it's the miscellaneous fee
Miscellaneous.
amendment, yeah.
432,
That's right,
right?
yeah.
1232, thank you. Moved by Councillor Patrick, is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Jackson, discussion, Councillor Swinbanks.
Thank you, Mayor Town, through to corporate officer. Under amendments, section 2, you've got tax certificates. Can you describe, what does that mean?
Sure. I pass that on to our CFO. I know it's an adjustment for when you
Our
purchase the truck. No, when
CFO.
you purchase the property, it's an adjustment for the taxes owing.
Yeah,
Phil Schultz.
thank you, Mayor Brown, Councilor Schweinberg. A tax certificate is what a notary or lawyer will request when there is a transfer of property. And what that does, it tells exactly the amount of property taxes owing, the exact amount of utilities. So they can adjust that as part of the conveyance process. So obviously we charge for that. Every other municipality does. But upon doing some research on it, we've been not charging enough. So this just gets it to kind of market rate.
And moving it to $100, is that commensurate with neighboring communities?
That's very commensurate with neighboring similar sized communities. Larger communities are more. So it kind of fits within similar sized communities.
Any further discussion? I'll call the vote, all in favor, and that is passed. So we're left with our middle box here. Does council want to continue the prohibition on phone trucks? Councillor Patrick, you have a motion.
I make a motion, Your Worship, that we totally do away with that the prohibition stays in place. We don't need food trucks in the village. I mean, the staff have got enough on their plate already without spending hours and time researching all this stuff to come back with another report. I mean, we got a thriving business community. If they want to put something forward, an event with their own business, they can do so. I think that the policy was there, but to allow food trucks to come in and set up, whether it be at the Memorial Hall or in the parks or on the streets, no.
So if I can just paraphrase your motion and maybe truncate it down, you're moving that food trucks, I guess, you're moving that food trucks not be permitted in the village.
Yes.
And that the status quo situation be maintained.
Yes.
So whatever exists today, continue into the future. Okay. That's the motion. Is there a seconder to the motion? Then we can discuss it. Seconded by Councillor Swinbanks. Discussion, Councillor Swinbanks.
Thank you, Mayor Town. Maybe through you to the corporate officer. I think the current language is that they are permitted in private areas outside of it. Am I wrong? That was the wording that we were thinking of putting in. There may be a compromise here. And if I'm doing a wedding at the Springs RV, why not have a taco truck or on Alder, but not anywhere near there? So I'm wondering if there's a compromise that we could strike.
So, Councillor Pike.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I agree with you, Councillor Schweinbeth. I do think there is room to include food trucks, but very, very limited. And I brought this up at council meeting, that for instance, in order to promote our skating rink in that off season, you know, an opportunity may exist to have a food truck festival there. I don't know, to completely prohibit them, I don't think is the right path. I would agree more to direct staff to conduct some more research and engagement, especially in smaller resort communities, and see, you know, and bring that back to council. One question for a corporate officer: should we ever allow food trucks? They would be required to have a business license, would they not? So that could have the possibility of generating that in a little bit more income, but I'm not in agreement at this time to have to continue that total prohibition. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pike. Councillor Patrick.
I respect all pros and cons, don't get me wrong on
Yeah.
this situation, but there's at least 3 restaurants that I know of, maybe 4, that will do catering. And if somebody wants to have a special event, say at the Springs Campground, they could ask one of the restaurateurs here to do the catering. I know when we used to have the wine festival in Memorial Hall, Muddy Waters used to do the catering for that. I know that the Corner Cafe here does catering. I know the Black Forest does catering. Now these people can be asked to put on a special event. And I mean, a perfect example, there's the Laurie's Catering doing the hot chocolates at the Festival of Lights. Perfect example of a business contributing to the event. And I think we should leave it to our businesses to do this. I mean, we're getting some static back about the fee structure. I don't think the fee structure is that tremendous amount to pay whatever, $25 or whatever it is extra, personally. But I'm just trying, I'm not going to say the word overprotected. We have to look after our business community. They are the next big taxpayer for this community. And whichever way they want to survive, let them have the opportunities to do these things. That's all I'm saying. So I'm definitely against food trucks total in the community.
Councillor Patrick, I just might follow up on that. I think our current bylaws carefully define food trucks, and it's not catering. They have a particular definition. There's 2 types of food trucks. One is a truck you see on the road, and there's a second definition. I was trying to perplex it. It could be something like a hot dog wagon that's pushed around up on the beach. There's 2 different types, and it always has an aspect of direct sales to the public. And I think what you're talking about is catering, and catering doesn't fall within that. That's outside. In my mind, catering and food trucks are very separate things.
If I may just jump onto that one, Your Worship. I'm not sure if we still have the policy. I think maybe we did away with it, but at one point, it still may be there. If you had a business you could have an extension of that business, like you just said, with the food cart on the beach. We had that for many years, the hot dog stand, stand was there maybe for 10, 20, 15 years. I think that policy is made, but it had to be an extension of an existing business. Whoever had the business could give you an extension to put your hot dog stand onto the beach. Now, when we had the event here a few years ago I believe that the food cards had to be guaranteed at least $1,200 or they wouldn't come. So if they didn't get that, that was a cost, I think, that we had to pay the village if they didn't receive that. So that was part of that when Rhonda was here. I think to put it on, it cost the village $10,000 or $15,000 that event, but they wanted a guarantee. That's why instead of 3, only 2 turned up for that particular event. So they're not guaranteed us. They're not going to come all the way from Abbotsford or Chilliwack for $500 sale. That's where I'm coming from. So I think this is the other negative part of the food truck situation as well. You know, I mean, catering, whether it's a restaurant or a catering company, lorries have got their own catering van. They pull it up to the Memorial Hall or their truck when they're doing the weddings and everything else. But it's a business. What I'm trying to say is, let's keep everything within our businesses. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you for those points. I think there's room in the village for food trucks, particularly for private events on private property. I don't have a problem with that. To me, it's a variation on the catering. And if one of the RV parks wanted to have a food truck or two there for a summer, whatever it is, we've got a hot hamburger truck and a hot dog truck or an ice cream truck on their property in those, I don't see a problem with that. I think there's a balance for that, but I do have reservations about food trucks on Esplanade or on Willowwood Avenue in front of our restaurants. I think just the way the village is set up, that I do have, that I wouldn't support. Councillor Schweiman.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I'll try to be brief. I was in the trenches for 7 years with the chocolate store, and there's a lot of costs. Not only the supplies and the product and the employees, rent, taxes, and on a rainy Tuesday in February when you sell $210, you start to really worry. And it's kind of like an airplane. You know, if there's 100 passengers on a plane which fills it, all the costs are about 95 seats. They don't make profit until the last 5 seats are sold. It's kind of like that with business in the community. We just struggle to make ends meet throughout the year, and we need those Canada Days and Mother Days and Father Days full on in order to make the year work. So I want to protect the businesses that are near the lake. I might be open to something on the private areas down here, but businesses struggle. It's a difficult village to do business in, and I want to protect them, to Councillor Fascio's point. So I just want council to consider that. It's really difficult to survive as a business in this community.
So we have a motion, corporate officer. Can you read back the motion and see how to go forward?
I've listed is that the current prohibition on food trucks remain in place.
And the current prohibition is no food trucks allowed, period, in the village. Youth Services Manager.
Thanks, Mayor Talon. I just wanted to touch on one thing, and Councillor Fascio sort of brought it to light. There have been events over the last few years where food trucks have been a part of them. So one of my concerns now is that now that we've had this more fulsome discussion, that those sort of like gray areas or them being permitted at village sanctioned events, while we're then denying private properties the opportunity to do the same thing, doesn't necessarily correlate. I believe the wording that Amanda had put forward, I think it may have just raise too many alarm bells than were necessary, because it was still going to have an accompanying policy. It was still either going to need to be on private property or part of special event permit. Maybe it needed a bit more wording surrounding, say, for example, the Stehelas parking lot. That's technically private property, and that would be a good example of where staff wouldn't be recommending just full open access on that private property. So maybe it would need some more clarification on private property as part of a private event, or not in the commercial corridor unless part of a special event. There's also Sasquatch Days typically has a food vendor, and the change in the business license wording as proposed would allow the village a bit better control on ensuring that they have a business license and follow that process. And then, as Councillor Vital stated, it's a big investment from the village and tourism for Lights by the Lake. And if we're trying to draw people out here and then there isn't any businesses open, then it could be, as part of a special event, a good opportunity to draw more people to the community, who then would be more likely to visit the other businesses as well when they're here. Food trucks are sort of a niche market where it's not typically the same people that would be going to a sit-down restaurant. And it's also, they're typically higher cost items as well. So it may be like, oh, we're gonna do this and then we'll go somewhere else. So I just think there is opportunities to think about those special events in particular, now that the topic has been so heavily raised, and the impact that could have on the tourism.
Thank you for that, Community Service Manager. I know we have a challenge today to give some direction to staff as to how to move forward. I'm wondering, what I've heard, if I could advocate for a friendly amendment to the motion. And my amendment would be, let's maintain the status quo today, whatever that is, and direct staff to return with after some research with and some recommendations for taking into account the balance of this conversation, whether and how food trucks might be permitted for private events or other special occasions. If there is room for that, and make a recommendation. After further research, bring that back to council. So my amendment would be status quo today, direct staff to return with some recommendations after research on food truck licensings or opportunities for private events on private land or private property, or special events.
That are village sanctioned.
Village sanctioned special events, something to that, something to that. Is that sufficiently clear?
In Mayor Town Law, we include the other third box here, the bus tourism.
Can we do that after the food? I don't want to. This just, can I? I'll put that motion for. Is there a seconder to the motion to amend Councillor Fatshill's motion? Is seconded by Councillor Vital. Any discussion on the motion? Any clarification required? I don't see any. I'll call a vote on the motion to amend the motion. Sure, go ahead.
Corporate officer, would we be able to get a report back by next season, like by April 1st, so that we can get ready for next tourist season?
Thanks, Jeff. Through you to Councillor Schweinbenz. Yeah, we certainly can. We would have to do another amendment to the business license bylaw, another subsequent amendment, but yeah, we can definitely.
We'll get your report back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the intent is to have it before the special event season to clarify those requests when we do get them for special events.
Okay. No further discussion on the motion to amend the motion to allow for further research and a report in the future. All in favor? Opposed? And that motion carries. Which brings us now to the amended motion, which is now status quo today, directing staff to do some research and come back to council with a report and some recommendations for food trucks on what we discussed before. Any further discussion on now the amended motion? I don't see any. All in favor of that motion? And opposed? That motion carries with one opposed. Now let's deal with the last item. I'm into small bites on a Tuesday morning, and we'll just go one bit at a time so we don't cross paths and misunderstand. Councillor Schweinbenz.
Very efficient, Mayor Talon. I appreciate that. I would just move the same strategy. Let's send this back to staff for report. as they are with the food trucks.
This is for busking and
Door-to-door
door-to-door sales,
sales.
both of those.
Look at this, let's investigate this, send it back to staff.
So
Have
motion to
reports.
refer busking and door-to-door sales back to staff to bring something back to council at a functure date.
Same time frame, I will say.
Same timeframe. Motion to that effect from Councillor Schweinbenz, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion on that motion. Yeah, okay, Councillor Vital.
Thank you. I think that I would also like to see included for staff to conduct a little bit more research into whether we would be required to permit religious set up with literature and whatever. I've had some brief discussion with our corporate officer. That may be a, freedom of religion, come under freedom of religion, but our corporate officer has agreed to do some research on that. So if we could include that, do you need a special motion for that or an amendment?
That the motion be amended by including religious literature.
Can we just make it a little broader and it sort of be like, I think it's broadly under the banner of marketing and pamphlets, handing out pamphlets for
Yeah.
marketing or distributing,
In-person.
distributing materials.
Yeah,
Public spaces.
however you feel it could be worded to cover it, then
Yeah.
that's fine.
For all I know, someone may hand out window washing brochures and set up a table in the plaza next to
Yeah.
someone advocating something else. So I think the broader question is there about
Okay.
pamphlets and distribution, marketing. Councillor Fangio.
Again, this is a concern to me, the door-to-door. That's a no-no to me. No disrespect to Councillor Schweinbenz and young people trying to get a job. That's happened over the years. I'm mowing the lawn. They come around our place every year. But I'm not referring so much to that. It's the door-to-door where people, we've all read the news and seen the news where the elderly the door's been pushed in and somebody's assaulted you or robbed you and all this type of thing. And I think people are very weary of door-to-door sales situations. The other when Councillor Wyatt talks about the religious, have to be very careful there again, because every so many months of the summer we do have the people at the plaza with their stand with all the pamphlets. I think it's no disrespect to religion. I'm not going to mention the religion, but that they're there every summer as they are outside the pharmacy in Agassiz, same group of people. So again, why bother? But anyway, I'm just concerned about all this extra time the staff is going to take up and all this research. I'm going to be voting against this. Thank you.
Councillor
Mayor Town, if I may, with respect to Councillor Fascio, I think this is why we need to send it back to staff, because maybe there's a better way of doing things. Maybe we could have our cake and eat it too, if you will. So we can control the folks that are offending us, that are suspicious, and the other companies that, for instance, Student Works Painting or whatever, maybe they ask for permission from the office and say, hey, for the next week, we're going to be canvassing your village. They send a letter. It's a legitimate company instead of just these fly-by-night companies coming through. So maybe there's a permission aspect to this to allow them to do their thing, and also to make sure that we can enforce the problem people, if you will. So that's why I think we need to send it back to staff for because maybe we can cut down on the concerns that you've expressed, and at the same time allow legitimate companies to come in and do business.
Councillor
I
Patrick.
want my vote, but I'm going to vote because I don't want to be responsible for any unfortunate circumstances, and it will come back to the council. That's all I'm saying.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It's interesting. We're trying to fix something that's not broken. And the more you talk about it, the worse it's gonna get. I mean, we have tellers coming to our now door maybe 4 or 5 times a month. Cause they need their shares have dropped down out of sight almost. Young people out making some money. I did it as a teenager. I went out one time and I sold vacuum cleaners door to door. You want to have something tough to do. But the people were nice, you know. We're getting too much semantics here. We can't control everything. And that is really starting to bother me. We're trying to commit for something that our staff haven't got the time. And so it just.
Currently, that's prohibited though. Currently, the TELUS guy and the vacuum guy cannot legally come to our village. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, let's give it to staff,
Yeah,
come up with a policy.
but holy moly.
And we need to protect homeowners that are health compromised and really don't want to see anybody, and they need to protect them and.
So the corporate officer, could you reread the motion, make sure it's still, we understand when we call the vote what we're voting on.
So the first motion is moved by Councillor Schweinbenz that staff be directed to conduct research and report back to council regarding buskers and door-to-door sales.
Okay.
And then an amendment by Councillor Vital that the motion be amended to include in-person marketing, pamphlets, and distribution of materials.
So let's deal with the motion to amend first, whether to include the pamphlets and that kind of thing. And this is all about just researching this as opposed to, it's no actual motion, it's just get some more information so we can make an informed decision down the road. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? None. I'll call the vote on the motion to amend, and I am good with that. I like information. Opposed? 2 opposed, 3 in favor, so the motion carries for that staff work. And now we have an amended motion in front of us to direct staff to look into the busking door-to-door sales and now the pamphlets and things. Any further discussion on now the amended motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, and 3 opposed, 2 opposed, 3 in favor, and that motion carries. So at a future council meeting, we'll have a report and we can decide if we want to make any changes. Corporate officer.
Before, just to kind of wrap this up,
Yeah.
now that we've got this feedback and direction from council, what we will be doing is bringing back this version of the bylaw that complements the fee structure of the miscellaneous fee bylaw, and then also continues the food truck and busker and unsanctioned events, and then the door-to-door sales as they currently are. So we'll be bringing this bylaw back as is, recommending second and third readings at the next regular council meeting, and that will give us enough time to get that notice out and then hopefully go for adoption later on in the month and move forward with the billing process so that we can address the first part of those questions. So this will be forthcoming on a
Good.
future regular council meeting.
Is that Monday?
Monday. Yeah, it is Monday.
The
isn't it?
future is soon. The future is
The
soon.
future is now, yeah.
I think that takes us through our agenda. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. That was quick.